Reading with Joan, the place for.
Hi, it's Reading with Joan. We have some books to read for you today. Sometimes our books can just be stories, and other times our books can be non-fictions. That means real life stories about things that have happened to us. We've read books about Black and British. I think we're reading something about Windrush, and we have other books slotted out as our non-fiction books. And we also have a fiction slot where we read books and read stories, most of the time folktale stories from Africa and the Caribbean. Join us every time while we read. We will have fun. Please like, share, and comment on our channel. Spread the word. We love reading together on Reading with Joan. Our website is called InfoHubMe. You can join us on an adventure of reading free books. You can join us on an adventure of learning more about our culture. You can join us on the adventure of having a special read hub around the globe. You join them together and you have a reading and a fun time session. Visit our website today, subscribe to us, join our membership creative club. See you as we have fun on today's episode of Reading with Joan.
Reading with Joan, the place for all the fun. Creative kids.
Hi everyone, welcome to Reading with Joan Storytime. I'm Big J, and today we're starting a new book called The Story of the Windrush by K.N.Chimbiri. Let's read the intro. A Man Called Sam. In 1948, there was a young man called Sam King who lived in Jamaica, an island in the Caribbean. Sam was unhappy. The living conditions on the island were not good, and there weren't many jobs available. Sam just wanted to leave. Sam had left Jamaica before. He had traveled to England a few years earlier to help Britain during the Second World War. In those days, Jamaica was a British colony. For hundreds of years, several European countries claimed colonies all over the world. Britain had the biggest empire. Here's a picture of Jamaica at the time Sam was living in the 1940s. Here's a picture of the world at the time. All the countries that are darker orange, countries claimed by Britain. I can see India, I can see Australia, I can see Canada, and I can see Jamaica there too. Now, let's start chapter 1, the Second World War. Many of the people who lived in these British colonies believed that England was their mother country. Some of Britain's colonies were in the Caribbean, which is made up of first people, as well as some people from Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Most people in the Caribbean were of African descent. However, in school, the students were taught little about Africa or the Caribbean. Instead, the focus was on England and the English history. Because of their loyalty to the mother country, when Britain declared war on Germany in 1939, people in the British colonies wanted to help Britain. Sam's mother said to him, "My son, the mother country's at war. Go and help. If you live, it will be a good thing." Sam applied for a job with the Royal Air Force, that's the RAF, in England. He passed the test and the initial training in Jamaica, then traveled to England with other volunteers. After 3 more months of training, Sam worked with the RAF in England as an engineer. Around 1,000 Royal Air Force volunteers in the Caribbean arrived in Liverpool in June 1944. Here's a picture. There's also a picture of Sam leaving to go to England. Sam was just one of many men and women from all over the world who came to help Britain during the Second World War. However, after the war ended, the British government wouldn't let Sam stay in Britain. He didn't want to go back to Jamaica, but he had no choice. It wasn't just from the Caribbean that came to help England. There weren't just people from Jamaica that came to help Britain. There were people from Trinidad, like RAF pilot officer Ulrich Leslie Lukian, who came in 1943. There's a picture of him there. Let's read chapter 2, A New Opportunity. A few months after returning to Jamaica, Sam saw an advertisement in a Jamaican newspaper. Passenger opportunities to the United Kingdom. Troopship Empire Windrush, sailing about 23rd of May. Fares, the cabin class, £48, and troop deck was £28. Cabin class was a bit like first class in today's planes, and troop deck was a bit like economy. This was Sam's chance to return to England. The ship's fare of £28 was not cheap. For some people, this was 3 months' salary. Sam came from a family of farmers. They sold 3 of their cows to raise the money for his fare. So if you think about that, 28 divided by 3 would be about 9 cows. So £9 for each cow. Sam was one of more than 500 passengers who boarded the HMT Empire Windrush in Jamaica. However, Sam and the other Jamaicans were not the first Caribbean people on board the Windrush. The ship had already stopped at another British colony called Trinidad. Remember who else was from Trinidad? Officer Ulrich Leslie Lukian. However, many Trinidadians also believed that England was their mother country, and they too wanted to go to Britain. Peter Dahan, an Englishman who worked in the ship's bay, was surprised to see hundreds of civilians, many of African descent, boarding the ship to go to England. He was one of the 240 crew who worked on the Windrush. When the Windrush first sailed from England earlier that year, it had about 2,000 passengers on board, mostly white men, nearly all soldiers from England, Scotland, and Ireland. The Windrush was a troop ship carrying British soldiers to and from the colonies throughout the world. Peter thought that the ship would return to England empty, apart from its crew. He didn't know that the ship would be picking up non-military passengers on the way back. It really was something to see, he later recalled. The Windrush also stopped to pick up passengers at Tampico in Mexico and also Bermuda before departing from England. Some of the Caribbean people on board the Windrush were of Indian descent. Here's a picture of them on the Windrush. At Tampico, 66 Polish people, nearly all women and children, joined the ship. During the war, they had left Poland and ended up in Mexico for their safety. Now, they too were coming to England. On board, the Windrush were more than 1,000 passengers in the Caribbean, Britain, Bermuda, Poland, Gibraltar, and Burma. However, it was the Caribbean people who made up the majority of the ship's passengers. Some passengers felt unwell because of the motion of the ship, seasickness, the English food served on board, they maybe weren't used to it, or the weather, because it was probably a bit colder than what they were used to. That's all I'm reading for today. My summary for what I learned for today is that Jamaica had helped Britain in the World War, but they wanted to leave to Britain for more job opportunities. And later, we'll read about the voyage. I hope you enjoyed today. Bye!
Welcome to RWJ, Reading with Joan Storytime. I hope you enjoyed our story about the Windrush. But we are still continuing reading a story from Tales from the Caribbean. And today the title of our story is Anansi Tricked Three Kings. It's a story that's based on a folktale from St. Vincent. Once upon a time, there was a king, and his kingdom there was drought. And the king's garden there was a well, and the well provided all the fresh fish for all the village. The people in the village needed permission from the king to get water from the well, and they all relied on the fresh water to live. Without it, they would all die. This made the king very powerful indeed. Bear Anansi was very jealous of the king. You see, Bear Anansi didn't like the fact that the king had all the power. Bear Anansi wanted to be the all-powerful one instead. Now, everyone knows Bear Anansi is a trickster, and since days gone by, Bear Anansi had been known to outsmart the mightiest of the people. So Bear Anansi thought for a long time about how he would outsmart the king. Then Bear Anansi had an idea. Every night when the king was sleeping, Bear Anansi decided he would sneak into the king's garden and drain some of the water away from the well. Since the water in the well was what made the king powerful, he would get rid of it so that the king would lose the power over the people. But that's exactly what he did. Night after night, little by little, Bear Anansi emptied the water in the well until there was hardly any left. When the king went into the well and saw that nearly all the water had gone, he was very suspicious. Won't you be, king? Very, very suspicious. Someone is emptying the well, he said. I will find the culprit and I'll make them pay. The king decided to set a trap for the thief. He made a man out of a top and put the man next to the well. He put a piece of bread in one hand and fish on the other to make the tired man look like a real man taking a meal. The king was sure that the thief would stop and try to talk to the tired man, and eventually he would think he was being ignored and would start a fight with the tired man. That was the plan. Did the plan work? Let's find out. Well, just as the king has thought, Bear Anansi came that night to get a bit of water from the well. When he arrived and saw the man standing next to the well, Bear Anansi said, Howdy, howdy. Of course, The tarman did not answer. Anansi shouted louder. I said, howdy, but there was no reply. Fella, I'm talking to you, said Anansi, vexed now. Still, there was no answer. Now, Anansi was a bit of a temper and gets upset when he thinks anyone is being rude to him. So he put his head next to the taffet and said, who are you anyway? The king's watchman? You're going on like me. You're going on like you think you're so great, but you are no better than I am. Still, the man did not answer. So Anansi threw a punch right on his face. But because the tar was sticky, Anansi's hand stuck there, right on the tar man's jaw. Get off my hands, said Anansi. He grabbed the tar man with the other hand, and as he did so, of course, the other man's hands got stuck. By now, Anansi was even more angry, so he raised his knee to push the man over. But his knee hit the belly of the tar man. It too stuck fast. This was too much for Anansi. He pushed himself on the man, trying to toss him into the well. The more he wrestled with the man, the more Anansi stuck until he was fasting completely and could not move at all. The next morning, the king went to see if his plan had worked and saw Anansi stuck fast to the tar man. Anansi, said the king, I should have known it is you. The king was very pleased that he caught Anansi. He told his servant to chain Anansi up until he could think of a suitable punishment for him. Later that day, still unsure of the best punishment, the king had his men to bring Anansi to him. I will make sure you suffer for stealing water from the well, said the king. Maybe I should burn you on a coal fire. Anansi said nothing. The king watched carefully for his reaction, but Anansi remained silent. Or maybe I would whip you, said the king. Still, Anansi said nothing. Or perhaps I should drown you in the sea, said the king. Oh no, please don't drown me in the sea, said Anansi. You can do anything else to me, but please don't drown me in the sea. When the king heard Anansi's plea not to drown him, he thought it would be the best punishment. The king and two of his guards took Anansi out on the boat, tied the rope around his waist with some heavy iron on the other hand. When they got to the middle of the ocean, they threw Anansi overboard into the water. Anansi immediately sank right down to the bottom of the ocean. But at once at the bottom, Anansi untied the rope on his waist and floated right back to the top of the water. We spiders always flow back up, laughed Anansi. You did me a favor, he called out to the king. You may be a king, but I am much smarter than you are. Anansi is always witty, right, kids? He's a witty fellow. Let's continue. Let's find out. Then Anansi dived back into the water, and where he saw a shark. It seems that all the little creatures in the sea, the fish, the lobsters, the crabs, were afraid of the shark. Who is that? Said Anansi. And why are you all so afraid of him? That's our king, said the sea creature. He's powerful. If you get in his way, he eats you up. Well, I don't care if for your king as much, said Anansi. I am smarter than all of them. I've always made a fool out of one. The small fish trembled. Well, King Shark is the most powerful in the sea. You would be better off if you keep out of his way. Saying this to Anansi only got him hungry. We'll see about that, said Anansi. And he swam right over to King Shark and said, King Shark, I have been looking for you. I've been looking for you for a very long time. King Shark was not impressed with Anansi's casual approach. How dare you speak to me, you incy-wincy thing? Do you know who I am? I am the all-powerful king. Out of my way before I eat you. Anansi ducked out of a ferocious King Shark's way, just as he was about to snap him up with his jaw, and he shouted from a safe distance, Sorry to disturb you. It's just that I wanted to invite you to a feast. If you're busy. You are inviting me to a feast? Interrupted King Shark, suddenly interested. What kind of fish? A tasty fish, said Anansi, getting a little closer to King Shark now that he had his attention. If you're ready to catch fish, you can cook them and have a tasty feast this afternoon. Cooked fish? Snapped King Shark, intrigued. That will make a change from eating them raw. I'll come to your feast. Fine. First, we have to catch the fish, said Anansi, glad that he managed to convince King Shark to join him. Okay, that's easy, snapped King Shark, and he cut through the water at great speed. The little fish tried to get away from King Shark, was too fast for them, and he caught plenty. When it was time to bring the fish up offshore, Anansi called the King Shark. Come offshore, King Shark, come offshore. I'll stay in the water while you cook the fish, said King Shark. I can only stay out of the water for a couple of minutes, so you cook them and bring my share when it's done. Anansi agreed to cook the fish and then bring King Shark his share, while King Shark waited in the water. Anansi fetched some wood and lit a fire, ready to cook the fish. He put a large copper pot full of water on fire and filled the pot of water with the fish he had caught. When the fish were all cooked up in water and steaming hot, Anansi called to King Shark. King Shark, come offshore and join me for the feast. I've heard you can stand on the tip of your tail. Show me. Well, King Shark liked to show up, so he was ready to come out of the water without much persuasion. I will, said King Shark, but only half a minute. Otherwise, I will die in the sunshine. Kate, we're going to stop reading the story here, and hopefully next time we'll find out what happened with the rest of the story. Hope you enjoy it. Next time, we'll tell you the lessons we learned, if there is any.